Welcome back to another episode of Historic Headstones of Norfolk. Yesterday was August 18th, 2020. It was the 100th year anniversary of the 19th Amendment becoming law. Today we are talking about a suffrage, but a very, very early suffrage, before even the 1900s. This is post-Civil War suffrage. This is the first Norfolk suffrage ever, and she's buried here in Cedar Grove Cemetery in Norfolk. Her name was Martha Butt. She was a novelist, poet, and a suffrage who in 1853 became one of the 5 Southern women to respond to Harriet Beecher Stowe's anti-slavery novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, with a novel of her own, Anti-Fatism, A Tale of the South, in 1853. Defended slavery as moral and Christian, but it never achieved the critical or popular success that Stowe or even the other rebuttals received. She was a Norfolk native. She continued to write, contributing to both regional and national magazines. She championed women's rights, but criticized the efforts as well on behalf of women's rights, generally affirming the traditional role of women in the household. But she is best known for her suffrage work. A lot of people don't realize suffrage was pretty much a racist movement. It was mostly white women with very little minorities. We only had one that we know of, one African American suffrage here. Her name was Nell Mercer. She was part of the National Woman's Party in 1917 and 1918 through 1919 as well, where she was protesting in Washington, D.C. and got arrested with a lot of suffragists. She is buried out in the family cemetery out in Virginia Beach, but she is the only African American suffrage I know in this area. So this was a racist movement, unfortunately. All right, the pioneers of the 1800s suffrage movement were mostly retired or passed by the time the suffrage movement in the early 1900s were daily front page news. The suffrage movement first took place in Virginia when 7 came together, including Martha Bennett, under the leadership of Anna Whitehead Barker, to become the first suffragists in Virginia. Forgotten today, these women laid the groundwork for the Equal Suffrage League that helped earn the women the right to vote 50 years later. Anna, the leader of this very early suffrage movement, stepped forward with the explosive post-Civil War political climate to urge women issues be included on the reform agenda of rebuilding Virginia, particularly the issue of women's suffrage. Just how and when Anna first became interested in women's rights is not clear. By the late 1860s, she was well versed in the subject and followed the activities of the National Women's Suffrage Association, the larger of the 2 suffrage organizations founded in 1869. Having read accounts of the NWSA convention held in Washington, D.C. in January 1870, she was delighted to learn that Paulina Wright Davis, a longtime women's rights activist, planned to visit Richmond following the meeting to enlist Southern support for the suffrage cause. She invited the suffrage leader to her home for dinner and conversation. There were among 15 or so guests at the dinner on the evening of January 26, 1870, including Martha. Paulina Davis spoke to the group about many injustices to which women had been subject to throughout history and explained how the power of the vote could help to right these wrongs. She provided an overview of suffrage activities in the northern United States and expressed her hope that Southern women would soon join the fray. That night, Anna announced that she intended to call all those interested in the movement together again to establish a formal women's suffrage organization. Miss Davis was tremendously impressed with Anna, and she termed the most brilliant woman she has met in years. On May 6, 1870, a small group of women adopted the Constitution, elected officers, and affiliated with the National Association. Martha here was elected the very first vice president of any suffrage organization in Virginia. This is how important she is, becoming the Virginia Women's Suffrage Association. Throughout the summer and fall, the association invited many speakers all around the nation to speak to Richmond women, including Susan B. Anthony, the most famous suffrage leader in the country, on December 9, 1870. She's been all over the news lately. She got pardoned yesterday by the president. So she's very famous. Anna gave a speech before Susan's speech, whom Susan B. Anthony remarked, "Whoo! Ain't she a savage?" She never heard anyone across the country give such a passionate speech like Anna did in Richmond. With Anthony's visit inspired the League to fight on for women's right and the right to vote. They held many lectures, hosted many speakers throughout early 1871. The League was dealt a horrible blow when Martha died a month later after that. She died from natural causes. The whole League came to Norfolk to attend her funeral right where we're standing. The first Suffrage Association of Virginia were all standing around this stone for Martha's funeral. That was the first time any Suffrage Association, League, anything gathered in Norfolk, was right here in this cemetery. All right, the Richmond press and the men in Richmond were very against women's suffrage. Richmond newspaper constantly stated that this group of women were just wasting everybody's time, and women should be home taking care of their families and not lecturing in halls pushing for suffrage. After the spring of 1871, it looks like the League might commit itself to more intensified activities on behalf of the suffrage cause. Many lecturers and guest speakers continued to come to Richmond to speak for suffrage. On January 31st, 1872, the League tried to get permission to talk at Virginia's General Assembly in the Capitol. This was the boldest move the League had done to date. Their request was accepted, and the legislation guaranteeing women to right to vote was even put on the floor for vote. Not surprising, it was shot completely down. This was the last defeat for the League. After 1872, Anna stepped out of the spotlight. She was defeated and never fought for suffrage ever again. Without her leadership, the League was disbanded, and she lived quietly in Richmond and died on October 26, 1904. She is now forgotten in history. She never lived to see women get the right to vote. This is just a very important lady. I don't believe in her books. I don't believe in what she was writing about minorities and things like that. But she was a suffrage, and she did fight for the women's right to vote. She died young, and she is the first suffrage of Norfolk. All right, guys, take care and have a great day.